Hi everybody, so today I have a video talking about the strategy and tactics of a unit of fire dragons in your Eldar army. You see these guys show up in a lot of army lists, especially a lot of competitive lists, so I want to go over what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, why you put them in your army, what they do for your army, and what their limitations are. So let's get right to it. So let's talk about their abilities, their stats. First of all, they're standard aspect warriors, which means they have great initiative, good weapon skill, a solid ballistic skill, strength and toughness like all other Eldar. It's pretty low, but that's their lot in life. And they have a 4+ armor, which is reasonable. It's certainly not great, but it is reasonable, and it's very standard for a lot of Eldar. They have no real melee weapons to speak of. I mean, they just have, they charge in and use their one attack to fight things. They're clearly not a close combat unit. They have amazing guns. They all come with melta-guns. So you know them, you love them. If you're a Space Marine player, you have copious amounts of them. You lucky bastard, you, in your army. But if you're an Eldar player, there's limited ways to get meltas into your army. And these guys are a spectacular way to get meltas in your army. Why? Because every single guy carries a melta weapon. And at a good ballistic skill, I mean, that's just golden. Those melta guns are impressive. I mean, they can take on any target. They can rip open vehicles. They can blast down monstrous creatures. They can cut through armor. They can insta-kill things. Amazing, amazing gun. Assault, relatively short range, 12-inch range, but for a gun that's that powerful, there has to be some kind of drawback. I mean, if it was any bigger range, it would just be totally broken. So, their main ability is guns. That's their main thing. You've got great guns on them. Okay, other things to consider about these guys. They have melta bombs, so that's a great little grenade that has the same type of effect as their guns do, except in melee. Like most Eldar, pardon me, they are fleet, which means they're able to assault and throw their grenades even after they've fired their guns, potentially. And they are capable of taking a wave serpent as a dedicated transport, and it's something we're going to talk about later in this video, why that is a really crucial option. You got to put these guys in some kind of transport to really make them as useful as they can be. Now, let's talk upgrades on these guys. What kind of gear are we talking about that you can swap out here? Now, like most Eldar units, you cannot swap individual gear on individual models. You actually come with... the Exarch is the only one that is able to swap gear. It comes with abilities, comes with extra gear options. So what do you get first of all? When you take an Exarch, 12 points, you upgrade, first of all, his ballistic skill. Always a good thing when you're firing those meltas and you've got, a suicide unit that needs to explode the thing it's hitting. Better chance of hitting. Has a better weapon skill, although that doesn't help too much because you don't really, if these guys are in melee, they're probably dead. He does have a better armor save, which is actually very useful because now when they take a hail of fire, it's much more likely that at least the Exarch will survive. And if even he just survives and gets back into a vehicle, that is a victory in itself. I mean, he's going to pop out and blow up another vehicle potentially, right? So that you get that. Now, in terms of his upgrades, you can actually just leave him with a naked gun. Now, this is a Dragon's Breath Flamer technically, but it looks close enough to one of these that most people are okay with letting you just call that a regular gun. If you've got someone who's a real stickler, one of these models looks different. He's clutching a grenade like that, so you can use him as an Exarch sometimes. And just leave him with a naked gun is a great thing. Yeah, better ballistic skill, more likely to hit. For 5 extra points, though, you can take Crack Shot, an amazing, amazing ability. I mean, unbelievably cheap. What does it do? Lets him reroll wounds against things. So if he's firing that melta against, a Hive Tyrant or something, man, you're definitely going to put that wound on him. It also lets him ignore cover on things. So, for instance, if you're firing at a Storm Raven or something, or a vehicle that went, flat out, flies flat out, it's contesting objectives, suddenly that one shot from the Exarch, which is also hitting on a 2+, is now going to ignore his cover. This thing's just going to take a strength 8 or potentially, a strength 8 with Tanked Hunters hit and just get blasted out of the sky. So, that's a very useful ability. 5 points, no matter what weapon you take, that's a great one. The other option you can do is for free. You can draw up his gun and give him a Dragon's Breath Flamer, as you see here. Now, what does that Flamer do? Unfortunately, you waste the better ballistic skill of this guy because a Flamer always hits. However, it is a heavy flamer, so it's very effective at doing double duty for this unit. A lot of armies you play against, 5 Meltas are not going to be that useful against him. Like Orcs does not have a ton of vehicles that need Meltas. Certain armies don't have a lot of vehicles. Some foot versions of armies won't have a lot of vehicles or a lot of monstrous creatures. That means this unit can do double duty. These guys can still blast open vehicles. 4 Meltas is nothing to sneeze at, and this guy can now cook infantry, which with Crack Shot, he's going to re-roll to wound. So a heavy flamer re-rolling to wound, man, that is going to cook a lot of stuff. The last option you can do, it's not it's not a particularly popular one. I've magnetized my arms here, so I'm going to just clip this on here, is the Fire Pike. What is a Fire Pike? It's exactly the same as the other Melta guns, the fusion guns, however it has an 18-inch range. So what does that mean? It also means that its Melta range, the range at which it gets double dice to penetrate vehicles, is 9 inches instead of 6. And, that can be very useful because, depending on what the situation on the board is, not all these guys might be able to get into range on a vehicle, to get into Melta range. So suddenly, you can put this guy at the back of the unit and you're sure that he's going to get into Melta range, and maybe now the other guys will be in Melta range because, if one guy was in his position, he wouldn't get it. Pretty useful. It also means that when you're sniping things, when you're outside of your vehicle and you're having trouble getting into Melta range, he can actually snipe things from further away. He can just blow things out of the sky from up to 24 inches away, because 6-inch move, 18-inch shot. Pretty useful. It is 8 points. Not my favorite thing to do, but if you have 8 points lying around, it is not a bad upgrade. The last upgrade we're going to talk about is Tank Hunters. Now, this is a very controversial upgrade for these guys. Why is it controversial? You think Tank Hunters, that's a great upgrade. Everything should take it. Well, when you've got a unit of 5 guys with Meltas, and they're flying around in a transport, unloading within 6 inches of a Land Raider, I mean, they're probably going to cook it anyways. They're probably going to just destroy it. And, that's true. That's true. But let me tell you something. In 40K, any game of dice probably just doesn't cut it for me, If I have 15 points and I don't have it to spend on anything else, this is a good way to spend those points because you're going to ensure a better chance of penetrating this armor. Strength 8 with double dice, on average, will penetrate armor 15. We'll roll a 15. However, it might not. What happens if these guys pop out and only 2 of them hit? And suddenly only one of those is going to maybe penetrate the armor. And then you have a 50-50 only to do something to this vehicle. That's not great. With that extra Tank Hunter bonus, which is +1 to your vehicle penetration rolls, you're going to have a much higher chance of penetrating this. So you're just raising the odds in your favor. Very good ability. When is it also good? It's great when you're already out of your vehicle and your vehicle's been killed, or for whatever reason you're out of a vehicle and you start pretty far away from a target that needs to die. Here we got about a 16-inch difference here. You can move up to 12 inches away, and yeah, you can shoot Strength 8 at armor 13. But that's not going to give you great odds to blow it up. What if you're firing Strength 8 +1, essentially? +1 to your penetration rolls. Suddenly you have a much better chance of blowing it away from long range. So the Tank Hunters makes these guys have long range capabilities, right? So, it's not a bad upgrade. Pretty good upgrade if you have 15 points. Now, it's not cheap. If all you have is enough points to buy a minimum squad, so be it, right? But that's the way it's going to be. Okay, let's talk the most common setups. First off, the most common setup by far that you see people use is a minimum squad of 5 guys, no upgrades. Very effective, pretty cheap, only 80 points, and it really gives you a chance to just blow open vehicles for the smallest investment possible. Because they are a suicide unit, this is a very attractive option. Because they're the cheapest possible, they're probably very close to as good as if you had upgraded them at blowing up vehicles, and they're going to do their job usually. The next upgrade is to get a just regular Exarch. We'll play him with the role of this guy. Regular Exarch for 12 points is a great upgrade. +1 ballistic skill, better armor save. He's going to make it more likely the unit's going to do their job. And for only 5 points more, you can give him Crack Shot. What a great ability for 5 points. I mean, if you're going to take the Exarch, take the Crack Shot. Total of 17 points. Totally worth it, though, if you have the points to spare. The next most common setup is Exarch with Flamer, Dragon's Breath Flamer, and Crack Shot. This gives the unit dual purpose ability. These guys blow up vehicles. He can slaughter swarms and infantry models, re-rolling against them with Crack Shots to wound. I mean, pretty awesome. Very common setup. The 2 most common setups, I would say, by far. The Fire Pike, like we talked about, I don't know if we... You know, the fire pike, like we talked about, it's as much as people like to say it's such a useless gun, it's not useless. I mean, it's only 8 points. It gives you some flexibility. You know, it's there are situations in this game where you're going to need those extra 3 inches for double dice or extra 6 inches for firing. But you know, that's not that common of a setup. Usually, the most common is either naked or Exarch with either a regular gun or a flamer. All right, let's talk strategy. Why do you put these guys in your army? What do they do for your army? Put very simply, they are the premier vehicle busting unit in the entire Eldar Codex. And, you know, probably, definitely in the entirety of 40k, they're one of the better vehicle busting units. I mean, for as many points as you invest, it's not easy to get 5 Meltas at this level of ballistic skill, you know, at this cheap, and to be able to really put them on the board and blow up a vehicle, especially given that in the Eldar Codex, they're usually in a fast skimmer. So unlike other codexes, they're flying around with ease. They're repositioning with ease. You know, you use these guys to bust vehicles. They really are not good at anything else. They are a suicide unit. Use them well. Crack those vehicles open. Make sure that your sacrifice of these guys counts. Now, one thing we haven't talked about yet is the possibility of a full squad of 10. So, you know, that is a possibility. I mean, these guys obviously can be fielded in size of up to 10. You can include an Exarch. Why do you never see people really do that? Because it's just not recommended. For the amount of points these guys cost, you can take a unit of Banshees that is going to rip through melee if you're going to put these guys in melee, right? And there's no upgrades you can even take on the Exarch to make them even more survivable in melee. I mean, they're just a bunch of guardsmen with better stats, right? It's not worth it. I mean, if you really want to play around with craziness and you want to take a unit of 10, you want to be different, well, then I recommend you must put a Farseer with the unit. First thing, you're going to need that Farseer to maybe fortune these guys so they can at least survive melee for long enough so that some other dedicated unit can cut them out. You're going to maybe want to guide them. You know, that's never a bad thing, to guide these guys, to have them hit more likely. That's always a crucial thing, because usually the problem with these guys is hitting. You know, it's when you roll 5 dice and only 2 of them hit, that really stings, right? Because penetrating is usually not that hard with the Meltas. You know, if you're really gonna go for a unit 10 of these guys, throw Eldrad in there, then you can fortune them, you can doom the target they might have to fight, and you can guide their guns. But again, I don't really recommend playing a unit of 10. It's just, it's way too many points, way too fragile. It's so easy to tie these guys up. These guys pop out, blow away Land Raider. Well, good for you. Now a bunch of Gaunts charge in, and, you know, tie combat with them for 4 rounds. I mean, what was the point of that, right? So I don't really recommend big units to these guys, but if you're going to do it, then hey, go big or go home. Throw Eldrad in there, help him kill stuff in melee. Keep these guys alive, so be it. Okay, let's talk tactics. You know, this is the meat and bones of how to use these guys. The first thing is, I really recommend putting these guys in some kind of transport. I mean, they are not suited. They're simply not suited to a foot army style of play. You know, even if you are putting them into a foot army, they have to be in some kind of transport. They're just too juicy of a target. They're expensive, they're easy to kill because their armor and toughness is crappy, and they have the most dangerous guns on the board. I mean, what opponent wouldn't just gun these guys down the first chance they got? You got to put them inside a vehicle. They have to be protected. And the other thing the vehicle does is it gives them mobility. It gives them mobility. So their guns are short range. How are you going to get into that range against an opponent? Well, you're going to do that by using a fast skimmer that can, you know, go 12 inches, unload them, still fire one of its guns, that can go flat out one turn to get a cover save and bring them close to the opponent, you know. I mean, if you're dealing with like a Manticore or a Lehman Russ somewhere way in the back of the board, and you have a mechanized army, you can advance on those vehicles very quickly with a skimmer like this. So you're going to want to put in a vehicle. Now, how is this going to work? You know, just really basic, just a demonstration for anyone who's new to how these transports work, how this is going to work. You know, let's just say you have a Land Raider over here, and you've got your vehicle with, we're going to put him off the board here somewhere. He's pretty far away. You got your vehicle with these guys. They look like they're about 18 inches, maybe 20 inches away over here. You're going to take this vehicle, you're going to fly up to 12. You can unload any direction you want, but you want to have them all within 6-inch range. So we're going to kind of unload like this. Pop these guys out here. You know, there's a 2-inch distance on these guys. And there's a 2-inch distance, sorry, that you're able to unload within. And you're going to fire those Meltas within 6 inches, and you're going to try to wreck that vehicle. You know, this gives you the freedom to be able to use this mobility of the vehicle. Maybe it was over here, maybe it's, you know, going that way, maybe it's coming from somewhere way over there and it's landing here. I mean, this is the delivery system for these guys, you know? And you can use a Wave Serpent, or you can use a Falcon. The Wave Serpent is possibly a dedicated transport for them. Pretty good option because it's cheaper. It has good defensive abilities, has decent guns. It's pretty expensive, though, for what you get compared to what other armies get these days, but you know, it's a very viable option. You see a lot of people using them. A Falcon is also a very intriguing option, you know, specifically with hollow fields. It's a much more expensive option, but the difference is the Falcon has hollow fields. So when the Falcon flies in, you know, and if there's retaliation from, like, you know, guys inside here, or maybe just somebody's nearby retaliates against it, it's much less likely to be destroyed because it's got that hollow field. Whereas this thing, once it unloads these guys, not only are they in danger, but this thing's usually in danger. It's pretty close to maybe some power fists, despite the fact that it went fast. I mean, a single power fist gets through, it could just wreck you outright. You know, you got to consider that. It's more expensive to get a Falcon, but it is worth it, I find, to unload these guys, because it can also fit a unit of these guys. Something to think about there. Now, let's talk about, when is fleet ever useful? You know, how could fleet be useful on these guys? First of all, we're putting them inside a transport. Second of all, I mean, these guys are not going to be going to the melee very often. Why would fleet ever be useful? Well, I'll give you an example. Here you have the vehicle of all vehicles, Land Raider. This distance between them is about 15, maybe 14.5 inches, something like that. Now, these guys have just their melta-guns, right? And, you know, in fact, let's get the Exarch out of there. Let's just throw 5 regular dudes, you know. For whatever reason, last round, maybe they popped out of a vehicle. They've shot. And this round, they're on the table. I don't know how they've survived, but maybe they've survived. There's 5 guys. And there's a Land Raider there. Now, this thing maybe hasn't moved. Maybe it's immobilized. You know that even though if you move up 6 inches, you're going to be out of melta range. So you're not going to get the double dice that you need to, you know, the double dice for penetration that you would get if you were within 6 inches of this vehicle. You look like you're about 8, maybe 9 inches away. So what's the point of firing at this thing? I mean, strength 8, armor 14, you're only going to glance it on 6s. You know, granted you have AP1 guns, right? So they're going to roll better on the damage table, but it's just not very reliable. I mean, statistically, you shouldn't even get a single glance. Even if every single one of these guys hit, which they won't, statistically, you can't even expect a single glance against that. Man, what's the point? So, you know, that's a wasted shot. Shoot at something else. But if you really need this vehicle to die, well, now you can fleet. You roll that dice. If you get just 2 or 3 inches, let's just say, right? Yeah, if you roll a 1, so be it. We've all had that happen. But you started, you know, about 15 inches away. You've ran up about 3. And now you're in range to actually assault. And what are you going to do in your assault? You're going to throw melta bombs. Each guy is going to get to throw a single melta bomb, which is made even better if this thing has not moved or is immobilized or something like that. So now you're going to have the effect of your guns, basically, a single shot with melta effects, but you're going to get it, even though you were 15 inches away. So that is how, you know, that's one of those kind of situations that fleet might actually be useful if you are on the board already. Or let's just say you were inside this vehicle, and this vehicle, you know, the doorway was 15 inches away. Well, you do the same thing. You pop out, you move your 6 inches, you run hopefully a good, you know, 2 or 3 inches, and then you assault in. Now let's talk about another sort of tact that you use is a use of cover. I mean, it's very crucial for a lot of Eldar units because our armor's pretty poor in most cases. You know, if you have an example like this where this thing's about probably about you know, looks like 14, 15 inches away from these guys. You know, again, you're not going to get into melta range, so you might as well just make use of cover and fire at long range. So, you know, make your roll, get in there 2 or 3 inches. You get into this area terrain here. We're going to make this area terrain represented by the footprint of these 3 trees. And now at 12-inch range, you're firing at that thing and you're in cover. So, you know, you're taking shots at this thing. Maybe you have tank hunters, which again, that's why it's a useful ability. It gives you the possibility to have strategies like this. Where, you know, 3 surviving members, maybe after nuking a vehicle, 2 of them died, are still able to put out some shots. You know, they take cover, they fire at a vehicle, chance of wrecking it, and, you know, they have a little bit of protection over here. So, you know, once you've come out of your vehicle and maybe your vehicle's been destroyed, you know, make use of the cover, make use of your 12-inch range when that's the only way to get around things. You know, alternatively, one of the, you know, you've got those melta bombs. So let's just say you started over here and the vehicle's a little bit closer. Then, you know, move out, fire those meltas, and if you still don't do anything with them, well, great thing, you've got melta bombs. Now that you've fired your guns, they failed, but hey, you've got meltas, get in there. Throw those melta bombs. You know, these guys are a suicide unit. If this vehicle explodes, very often it's going to kill a couple of these guys, but that's just the way these guys work. You know, they're a suicide unit. They're the ultimate adage of Eldar, which is that Eldar units are good at doing the exact job they are supposed to do, and usually nothing else. So these guys are great at killing vehicles, not great at anything else. Sacrifice them if you have to, but make use of your meltas, your meltas and your melta bombs in this kind of situation. You move up, you shoot it, that doesn't work, you charge in, throw those melta bombs. Don't forget you have those melta bombs. Let's talk about another tactic when it comes to unloading these guys. So let's just say you've got 5 fire dragons inside your wave serpent, ready to unload. You've got this juicy Necron vehicle, Annihilation Barge. That thing needs to die. Believe me, this thing needs to die. And you know that based on where you are, you're within range to unload and just blast that thing from melta range. Now, there's a bunch of places you can unload. I mean, hey, you can just unload here, fly in from the side of the board somewhere. You fly in, turn your butt towards it, throw these guys down, pray that they blow it up, expose your armor maybe to that direction, presuming your opponent's on that side. Not the best choice. Not the best choice. We got to be smarter than that, just showing our butt to vehicles and praying for the bbest. We're going to be using terrain. We're going to have our wits about us. You got to have your wits about you when you're playing Eldar. Make use of terrain. Make use of the stuff that's on the board. Make use of the things that are blocking line of sight. We got this vehicle. Let's presume there's some enemies over there somewhere, up to 15, 16 inches away, ready to shoot. Some guys over there ready to shoot. That kind of thing. This thing is going to fly in instead. Flies in. It's going to make use of this terrain. It's going to back up really close to this, but leaving enough space for the fire dragons to see. And you're going to pop these guys out within melta range, but gaining some cover. See, that guy's got half of his body covered over there. This guy is going to be relatively out in the open, but then his buddy over here can still see underneath the vehicle, and you can actually see the edge of that guy over there. As long as the majority of your unit is not granting it cover, you're going to be able to take away its cover save. And more importantly, you've created a very good defensive position. These guys are going to see that vehicle, they're going to see more than 50% of that vehicle. Each individual guy sees more than 50% of that vehicle. I'm showing it from the back of this train, so that's why this guy just sees a part of it, but these guys all see 50% or more. You've also created a defensive position. You've protected yourself from things that might be about 8 to 12 inches here. They're probably not going to be able to assault into your fire dragons. They're going to have to go against this vehicle that's moved maybe 12 inches, so it's going to be hard to hit. You've given them cover against things that are way over there somewhere, maybe, that would be blasting in here. You've given them cover against targets that are way over there, potentially. And you're probably going to wipe this thing out. So now you've created a pretty good defensive position. It's not guaranteed. I mean, you can see things, they can see you, but at least you're protected. At least you have a chance of survival. And if even 1 or 2 of these guys survive, putting them back inside the vehicle, that's going to be a victory in itself. Because 2 meltas can still be unloaded somewhere to blow up a vehicle. So, use the terrain. Use smarts when you're unloading. Similarly, you can use the hulls of 2 Eldar vehicles in a creative little way to create a way to unload your fire dragons without being able to be assaulted by the thing that you are shooting at. So let's just say you've got something nasty. You've got a land raider, and maybe inside there's some troopers that may or may not be nasty. You're trying to crack this thing open to kill those guys inside, whatever the case is. But you want to maximize the chance that these dudes will survive. Maybe it's just a land raider on its own, and you don't want to deal with something that is able to be behind it and come through it to kill your guys. Interesting technique you use. You fly up one vehicle. In this case, we're using a Falcon. Maybe it's unloaded its crew already. It's just flying around being helpful. You've unloaded a Falcon, and you're going to give it a slight tilt. You're also going to fly in the Wave Serpent that has your 5 Fire Dragons. And what you want to do is you want to make sure the space between these vehicles is equal to or less than a base of a model. So, they're not actually going to be able to physically fit through that space when they're walking through. Because the rules are, obviously, when you assault something, you have to be an inch away from it unless you're planning on contacting it. You want to make it physically impossible for, like Terminators or something. They're not going to be able to fit through there. Regular troops are not going to be able to fit through there. And when you pop these guys out, you just conga line them. You conga line them, with a slight tilt if possible, just to, maximize the space you can put them out. You've got 2 inches to unload these guys from. And you're going to sort of conga line them like this, so that when they look at their target, they still see 50% or more of the target. They're not giving it a cover save. And more importantly, they are going to be impossible to be assaulted. This space, you've made it so that it's not even able to fit a base through. And, that's the important thing. So even though there's a couple of slivers there, they're not going to be legally allowed to be assaulted. So they're going to blow that thing up, and no assault coming back at them. Now, of course, these guys do not have amazing defensive stats, not amazing armor. So whatever's on that side might just shoot them to death. But hey, at least they will probably have cover against most targets that are around, and they're not going to be able to be assaulted, which is very important against certain armies that, like Chaos Space Marines might just have a bunch of pistols. Let's just say that was a Chaos Space Marine Land Raider. They might, they're meant for melee, but they won't be able to assault you. Hey, you might survive. If even one or two of these guys survives to go back in the vehicle, that's a victory in itself. Okay, let's talk weaknesses. So we've touched on them a little bit. I mean, these guys have terrible toughness, pretty middle of the road armor. They're quite expensive for their survivability ability. I mean, they're not very survivable for the points, is what I'm trying to say. They don't have any real melee capability. I mean, they're just like fancy, high initiative, better weapon skill guardsmen. You know what I mean? I mean, they are not going to conquer anyone in melee, other than Imperial Guardsmen, maybe. They'll definitely beat an equal number of Imperial Guardsmen in melee, usually, because they have very similar stats. But they're not going to do very well in melee. They are a suicide unit. They are so important for your opponent to kill that the moment they pop out, they'll probably get slaughtered, and your opponent's going to be gunning for their transport like nobody's business. I mean, if you want to see a Space Marine player, crap his pants, just watch what they do when it's turn one and these guys are on the board inside a transport. There, every missile's coming at it, every las cannon even. I mean, it's just everything's coming at this thing just to blow this thing up so it can't deliver them, and then to kill the guys inside. They're simply not going to survive very many games. The main thing to do with these guys is to make sure that whatever sacrifice you put them in is worth it. Make sure it's worth it. What do they suffer against? They suffer against things that are immune to meltas. For example, Stormraven. That's my alternate Stormraven model I have. They suck against things like this because it's immune to the double dice melt effect. Now, mind you, these are still strength 8 guns against usually things that are armor 12 or less, which are immune to meltas. Usually, except if you play Forge World, there's some Land Raider now that's immune to melt effects. I mean, I can't believe that, but they're going to struggle against this. They're still going to have a chance to blow it up. If the Exarch has crack shot, he might be ignoring the cover save on this thing, but you're basically just firing AP-1 missiles at that point at it. Not the worst situation to be in, but definitely a lot less reliable, even at short ranges against these things. Against these kind of things, what do I recommend then? If it's immune to meltas, don't bother getting into melter range. Use your range. Stay 12 inches away. Fire at it from 12 inches away. Screw that. You don't want to give me my bonus dice? I'm going to hide in a forest and, blast you from that forest. Suck it up. How you like that? That includes things like Eldar Wave Serpents, because Wave Serpents, as we know, have the energy shield. So let's just say you're fighting against another Eldar player. I mean, yeah, your meltas are not going to be as effective. So again, stay 12 inches away from this thing. Just fire at it, use it as AP-1 missiles, the same way you would do that, because you're not going to get your melta dice. The last weakness to think about is that these guys are an elite choice. And the elite choices in Eldar are pretty packed with good stuff. And it can be hard to choose. And if you're a lot of players, you'll see they'll take like 2 or 3 units of these guys. I mean, geez, I don't know how they... I don't know what kind of settings they play in, because if I was playing against orcs and I had 3 units of these guys in vehicles, I'd probably just, call it a game and just, shake my opponent's hand. I mean, they're not great against things like orcs, but if you are going to play with a lot of them, that's going to cut through, that's going to, steal away your elite slots. It means no Wraithguard. It means, no Striking Scorpions, no Banshees. I mean, all those units have their own uses, and you might want to play with a bunch of them, but if you're taking 2 or 3 units of these guys, you're just going to really cut down your options in that regard. So think about that, and that does explain why a lot of Eldar armies, the only elite choice you see is these guys. I don't really agree with that. I think 1 unit of these guys, with an Exarch, for instance, is more than enough in many scenarios, because they are a suicide unit. Maybe 2 units sometimes I'll put 2 in if the rest of my army really has no anti-tank. But I say 1 unit is gold. Stick to 1 unit for now. Don't go overboard and buy 15 of these guys just to build 3 units. I mean, I think that's a little bit crazy. Okay, so final thoughts on these guys. Very good at busting vehicles when you can get them to within melter range. Still good at busting vehicles at 12-inch range, assuming those vehicles are armor 12 or less. A very good unit for that. They are usually a suicide unit, so consider that when you're building your army list. I mean, your opponent wants these guys dead just as much as you want to put them into your army. Protect them, give them a transport, make sure their sacrifice is worth it. If you sacrifice these guys for no gain, that is a huge, huge loss for you. Okay, guys, I hope you liked the video, and as always, post any comments and questions below, and take care.